Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. Buildless Paradise has over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Buildless Paradise has what you need.
Wow!
Oh, and remember, we're open all day Saturday to serve you better. This is something that you can't refuse. Visit Buildless Paradise today at the CA Paul Southwell Industrial Site in St. Kitts or call them at 466-4938.
Good evening. This evening, of course, I'm in the hot seat as our great host, Edric Herbert, has gone. I believe he's been drafted in the Ukraine Army, so he might have gone to face the battle. Therefore, I am again in the hot seat, and I will carry the program this evening. Good evening to the people of St. Kitts, and more particularly the gracious people of Nevis, those who listen to us on the World Wide Web and throughout the Caribbean Basin. Good evening, Naya.
Good evening, Mr. Stanley, and pleasant good evening to the listeners of On Radio. And I'm happy to be here once again, Mr. Stanley. I think we have experienced something quite fundamental here in Ireland, which is basically the passing of the Honourable Vance Armory. I don't think I've been here since that, so I suppose I'll use this opportunity to express my condolences to his family and friend, and also to hail him. And I think all have hailed Mr. Armory since his passing. I think I've not heard anyone who has said that he have not done well. Not for himself, because that is very difficult to measure, but for the island of Nevis, and to a greater extent the Federation. I personally must salute Mr. Armory as a son of the soul, a man who I see has a lot of discipline, very, very proud. He had a lot of personal pride, which I admire dearly, and he was really committed to what he thinks is right all the way through. He greets everyone with a certain degree of warmth, a good individual, a replica of a good Nevisian, I suppose, and we'll miss him dearly. I had the experience of being around him as a student in the Charleston Secondary School, and I know he ran that school pretty tight. I could remember he gave me a good, what they call spanking, which was 2 lashes with a tamon rod across my shoulder for being rude to a teacher. And through all this, I still have developed a high degree of respect for Mr. Armory as a Nevisian. Somehow I felt like I could have poured water into his cup and he would keep it safe as a Nevisian for Nevis. Quite a great, good person we have lost. And it's going to be difficult really for us to ever think of Nevis in the last what could I say, scores of years gone by without mentioning the Honourable Vance Armory. I tip my hat once again and I salute you dearly, your family and friends, my condolences, and we will welcome anytime another Mr. Armory here in Nevis, because we know what he have done for the island, And safe flight to glory, sir.
Well, now you have opened the batting with very poignant, I repeat, poignant message. And I would say this evening, as Naya has opened the batting with that on the table, we are opening ourselves for more tribute, although we did it last week. For those of you who didn't get an opportunity to give your tribute, Naya has given his. He's not belated because Mr. Armory has not been put under the earth as yet. We are awaiting the arrival of the body and ultimately the ceremony or whatever the funeral services, as the case might be, for the great leader. And as a result, we are hoping that this evening, those of you who didn't have the opportunity to call in and to express your condolences to the family, we are hoping that you would do so this evening based on the issue Naya has put on the table. We must go forward with a few more other issues. I saw last month, I think last month was a period for women who had been given a certain degree of recognition. And I listened to a program, but I was somewhat disheartened to not have seen this particular lady, Dr. Hazel Lords, among those women who were there, and Dr. Judy Nisbet, and also, let me brought this to the fore, they did a marvelous job with reference to keeping the health of the nation in check regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. And as a result, I just felt Dr. Hazel Laws and Dr. Judy Nisbet, both, should have been on the panel because the wealth of the nation is definitely tied to the health of the nation. And therefore, they have made a mammoth contribution toward the health of the nation, and by extension, the wealth of the nation. And to have seen other prominent women who made very, very good contribution to the building and the sustaining of our nation. They were there, they were introduced, but again, I felt that once you begin to mention women with major accomplishments, I think that Dr. Hazel Laws is head and shoulders above those who were there. Of course, they had the criteria as to why and to who should be participants at that particular forum. But again, I say the health of the nation is the wealth of the nation. And for beyond 2 years, she has guided the ship of state with reference to health. Also, Dr. Judy Nisbet on the Navy's end has guided the ship of state into more healthy existence of our people. And I would say they were supposed to be part of that delegation or presentation in terms of women who have accomplished a lot of good things for our nation. And the list could have been adjusted simply by adding 2 more names. These 2 names are of global importance, in my view, based on the lineup of the pandemic and the effect it had had on the world and various countries, as a matter of fact. So I extended this message, hoping that the next go around, those 2 prominent women, doctors, would be part of that presentation. Again, it didn't take a rocket scientist to expand the list to include them. And I do not know the reason as to why they weren't present at the presentation. But at the same time, they have gone beyond the call of duty and performed a Herculean task with reference to keeping our nation healthy and, by extension, wealthy. Now,
yes, Stanley, they were part and parcel of a group, and sometimes we single out the leader of such groups, but I think for the group to be effective, there are times everyone have to be counted. But if we're talking about paying homage to the women that have been outstanding in our community, is something I must tip my hat to. Is something I would encourage a lot, really, because if we just stop for a moment, we realize the rise of women internationally is happening in a major way. It's almost like a revolution taking place right before our eyes. I do hope that locally that trend can be acknowledged and encouraged big time. But even if it's not encouraged, it looks like the wave is going to engulf everyone. But women today throughout the world are playing a leading role in politics, and even here on the local front we have seen a few ladies. I'm sure to our friend Dr. Bartlett Delight have offered themselves to represent people, from the NRP party, and I must congratulate them. Because it's a step that I'm sure will open doors for other people, would bring that confidence, and not just for grown up, but even for the young school girls who is going to school. They're realizing now that they can be a part of a society where they and their contribution are appreciated, welcome, and with no hindrance can actually, and when I say hindrance, I mean the type of thing that we see happen, the sexism sometimes. With no hindrance, they can perform on the same platform as men do, right here in Nevis and abroad, as we've been seeing it. And so I will support any initiative that highlights the input, that encourages more input, and that strengthens that effort. of the females getting involved at the very top here in Nevis, Mr. Stanley. It's a welcoming phenomenon.
Very well. I recognize photo op with the Honourable Mark Bentley and the Deputy Prime Minister and the Prime Minister in the Observer. And I wonder what's your take on that issue in terms of the photo op, because I understood they had 2 meetings so far. And I think the rub came from the explosive fair share at the Honourable Mark Bentley brought to the PAM convention, and I stayed at home, listened as you, the panelists on Vaughan Radio, debated the issue, and I have fully supported the dissertation that Mark was able to disseminate, the information that he was able to disseminate at the convention. And I must applaud former Prime Minister can't bring his name right now, but at the same time, Mr. Richards took offense to what Mark said, and it was really a heavy quote from him that seemingly PAM came with an open hand, and it was met with a clenched fist from the Premier of Nevis, seemingly as part of team unity. Now, based on what the former Prime Minister said, we cannot abandon our friends. And that was a very poignant statement made by the former Prime Minister, more or less to caution Mr. Richards based on his approach toward what Mark had to say at the convention. And as the former Prime Minister mentioned, we cannot abandon our friends. It was really in support of the Honourable Mark Bentley's presentation. We need our fair share, and as a result, we have a champion who is out there propelling the cause of Nevis with reference to following the money and doing the math, and ultimately put out the demand for our fair share. That fair share, I do not know when it will be forthcoming, but based on the numbers, it seemed that we're able, from the math, to take care of our bills in Nevis and to propel our island upward and onward. And as a result, he must continue to agitate for the fair share of Nevis's portion to the extent where it could be realized in real dollar terms, and therefore we must be able to quantify the amount that is owed to us based on the share arrangement. Now,
Mr. Stanley, I don't think there's anybody on Ireland who will oppose our quest for fair share. I believe everyone who is conscious of politics and have any concern will, of course, will join with Mr. Mark Brantley. And in our quest for this fair share, as I said, it's heartbreaking, really, talking about it. It just doesn't make me feel good, because it's hard to be arguing and fighting, begging for what is yours at this late stage of the game, because everybody knows that this has been the cry of Nevis, I mean, from the 60s. But quite recently, and it always has been, but quite recently, from 2015 onward, we've been hearing the statement coming from Mark Brantley about fair share, which, yes, we have aligned our minds to what he was saying, and but it was quickly and sometimes easily brushed away, because we've been hearing about Sinkits not giving Nevis his fair share for so long that Nevisians now start thinking that they're just using that as an excuse. The government is just using that as an excuse. And that's why when they had the convention, and Mark used that opportunity to express itself, I am one who believed that he did the right thing. I am one who supported that particular act and that particular circumstance on that day. Because, as I said, from 2015 going forward, we've been hearing about it, but not taking it serious. Easy to say that. We did find it easy to say, hey, come on, man, we've been hearing about this so long. Sometimes we feel like it's just an excuse being used. But since Mark made that outburst, I call it an outburst, but he made a good speech, the facts has been coming out. The facts has been coming out. And it is so far-reaching and disturbing that, I can't find words to explain. Really and truly. The facts has been coming out. The figures has been put on the table. And it's bad. It's not good. It's simply serious disrespect to the people of Nevis and the Premier of Nevis, really and truly. And I do hope that in these meetings they can find some grounds to correct that and ensure that this fair share issue is settled once and for all, or at least once, until some other new arrangement come into play. The unity. How good is the unity? It's a political arrangement that was geared more towards one particular circumstance, and that was achieved. Dr. Douglas had to leave office, but still, I think there's a level of morality here. People say, this should have been part of the Constitution, and that if they understand, it's not easily putting things like that apart. There's something in the Constitution already, and people must understand it is in particular that surrounds the citizen by investment, right? Passport sales and all that. And but Nevisians now have a more clear understanding of the figures that we're talking about. The figures, not just Nevis ain't getting his fair share. We are talking about an amount that accumulates in the last year, if I can recall properly, of some 580 million, and you're telling me Nevis get 40-something million, and that is seriously embarrassing. No, it cannot be business as usual at all. And as Mark said, those meeting, one should either strengthen the unity or weaken the unity. However way, I hope that it set a good foundation for Nevis, in a sense that we learn a concrete lesson, whether we're going to continue to be apart or if we're going to pull away. But we have learned a concrete lesson, and I used to sit here with the Honourable, he's Honourable too, Theodore Hobson, and he tell me, now, this is our last chance. Our indulgence with Sinkits and politicals happening happenings, it's our last chance. And if it doesn't work, well, we got to think otherwise. You see, Navitians are very fortunate, very, very fortunate. I think Dr. Daniel have done a great thing. The 113 clause that a lot of people are so afraid to mention can be exercised at any time, over and over and over again, if we want it to be that way. It's not like some countries where if we have a referendum, it's an illegal referendum because it's not constitutional, like in Spain. You see, the guy get 15 years for doing that. And Nevis is not alone when we speak about secession. There's so many places in the world who are advocating the right to decide their own destiny, even within. There's one within Spain, there's one within France, and there's so many across the globe, really. But the point, what is special for us, I think, that is in the Constitution, and we can exercise it when we want. If we all together realize that we've been treated badly, well, all together we can come and work on a solution. Because at times I don't think a solution has been really sought when it comes to Nevis. And think it's a real solution, really. It's always some kind of patchwork, and this might happen. In case if that never happened, I don't know what might happen next time. Nevis might be there. We never have a concrete vision going forward, not even to say for 15 years. And so I hope that there can be some semblance of oneness here in Nevis when we see we are all affected by what is going on politically, when we in most recent time have aligned ourselves with St. Kitts. I fear that Nevis is losing a lot. It's pride, it's nationalism, that Nevisian pride. We are losing all that, and it is very worrisome. I'm not saying that it must go that way, but unless we start feeling good about the things here on island, like the various services, the hospitals and everything, that we don't always have to hop across the water, pride won't not be returned. Our sportsmen are not doing very well. They will sooner or later. Our artists are not doing well, but they will. These are people that make a country proud of itself. And I think we need to, honestly, here in Nevis, exhibit tendencies of unity and to race against what we have experienced, that division that happened to us coming from St. Kitts. They divide Nevis all the time, and we must be seriously mindful of that, and realizing that we all want the same here on island. We are hurting by the fact that no money is coming over here that is due to us. So let's together probably attempt to find solutions. Maybe here on Nevis, because it will be always if and maybe when we go across the waters.
Well, historically, the former Prime Minister Simmons mentioned that without team unity, they would never have had a fair chance to unseat the ruling party at the time. And as a result, he went into the history by saying they got 7 seats and they were able to form the government at a certain juncture, and as a result they governed. But the time came when the tide turned, and therefore they had to come up with a mechanism, and the mechanism was team unity. And therefore the Honourable Sean Richards attempting to say, we are not going to look at it as we did whatever was signed in terms of the Charlestown Accord on the steps of the courthouse. We have to re-examine, and therefore Simmons was a counter to Sean's presentation by reminding Sean that we cannot abandon our friends, and historically we were able to form the government under the Simmons administration, and as a result they were able to run the affairs of St. Kitts Nevis from the federal level, or at the federal level. And therefore the Honourable Sean Richards is saying we expected an open hand, not a closed fist, coming from Mark Brantley. Let's talk. Good evening. Please call back. We will go for a break.
Buildless Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. Buildless Paradise has over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Buildless Paradise has what you need.
Wow!
Oh, and remember, we're open all day Saturday to serve you better. This is something that you can't refuse. Visit Buildless Paradise today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site in St. Kitts, or call them at 466-4938.
Yes, as I was saying, the statement coming from the former Prime Minister Simmons was, good evening, y'all, let's talk.
Good evening, Mr. Stanley and your other guests.
Good evening, and how are you doing this evening?
That statement was made in reference to the Prime Minister Harris' response to you constantly. It was never made towards Mark. I don't know if the other guests, or the other guests with me could clarify it. Because he kept saying, look, we keep going to him and talking to him about our concerns, and we're getting no response. So it was never directed at Mark. So that is a correction you should make. All right then.
Thank you, but I'm not sure if...
Hello?
I'm not sure if I'm understanding you correctly. I was referring to the statement that was made by the Honourable Sean Richards.
Yes,
regarding are you saying then the statement was...
The remark was directed towards because there would have been no reason
Prime Minister Harris?
direct that response to Mark, since both of them are working together to get their issues fixed. That wouldn't be more likely, would have been made by the former Prime Minister, given the 1993 fiasco we had. It was when you reach out to CCM and Vance who refused to accept. But that response, that quotation you made, was made by
Sean Richards
in response to the indifference, he said, of the Prime Minister. So,
all right, well, I thought that Sean Richards and the Prime Minister were working hand in glove, as based on the fact that they're both from across the waters.
Together.
Mm-hmm.
No.
You know, so that statement could not have been made, and even what Dr. Simmons said. He said what he did in relation to the relationship they had between NRP and TAM. The level of trust. And as you said, the second time when they had the election, I think it was in 84, he said we had 6 seats, you know. So we really did not happy, but trust. He kept emphasizing trust. You know, so maybe you need to listen to it again.
Okay, well, thank you for the clarification and the guidance.
Your co-host could assist you.
Yeah, the caller is right.
All right then.
The caller is right, Mr. Stanley.
God bless you.
Yeah, Sean was speaking to. He was speaking about the Prime Minister, as he and Mark advocating their different position, and the Prime Minister is not non-responsive.
Stonewalling.
Yeah. So that comment was made.
Well, thank you for the clarification, and also I'll be guided by that. Now, based on the Prime Minister Simmons' statement, historically, they were able to form and administer the government affairs regarding the number of seats they won in the previous elections, but at the same time they weren't able to form the government, and therefore the coalition on the team unity was paramount, and they were successful. Good evening, caller. Well, let's talk.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I listened to the program here, right, my brother? I listened to you a while ago talking about the people. Let's start with the people for the COVID. The COVID people has failed Sinkits and Nevis people. The COVID people in charge have destroyed people's life in this country. So I don't understand why you're giving them kudos for. Because we see what happened to the COVID, we see what happened to people. The TDC workers can't get their money, was fired. Up now they can't tell people why they were fired, and look at what's going on. Look at all the function we've been keeping with the Prime Minister. Where's the COVID rules? Let's move on. Mark Brantley in Nevis has failed Nevis people. I know I got to understand that. These guys must stop, because Mark Brantley said the best thing happened to Nevis in history, and he went on is since he joined with Tim. And when I listen to a program with Patches Liebert, the ambassador, and Lindsey Grant said to this nation, that man on the radio station, we don't know what he named. This is Lindsey talking about Patches, who was in cabinet with Patches for 5 years. You all need to talk about the issues that's going on. Stop sugarcoat. Lindsey Grant said live Thursday night, that man on the radio, I don't know what he named. And the same Thursday night, Patches fire back. The 10 Commandments say, thou shalt not thief. Listen to Sean Richard's behavior towards the Prime Minister, who is the boss. Listen to them. They are fighting tooth and nail for the same money while they crucified Douglas for. And when Sylvia went talk about 1993, let's talk about 2011, in Nevis, the fiasco, when people tire was cut up, and the whole 9 yards what happened outside of Grove Park in 2011. When I must talk the truth, let's stop sugarcoat what's going on. Our country is in a big international mess, and I'm not ashamed, and I don't want to talk the truth. You have a good night. Let me hear what you say. I'll call back.
Well, you see, there are times when we take up certain issues, and it's not a matter that we're trying to sugarcoat anything. At least, I don't try to sugarcoat anything. I call a spade based on having the information. Good evening. Let's talk.
Yes, good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Yes, Mr. Stanley. I just want to say, listening to the argument now from Mr. Brantley, if the citizens had got that information before the 2020 election, the result just could have been different. You see what happened? I hear that this thing started, the problem, 18 months into the first term. But they kept that information just like what's going on in America with Biden's son. They hid the information, and now after the election it's coming out. The same thing in Sinkit. How could an election be free and fair when only one person knows the date, and then you have 11 members of cabinet? If the Prime Minister decides to call the election when the opposition is not prepared, that can't be an unfair election. Can that be, Mr. Stanley?
Well, I think the Constitution gives the Prime Minister the right as to when to call the election.
No, but I'm asking you.
and therefore the Constitution should be revised, amended.
To be fair.
In terms of...
No, but, I mean, what is preparedness? I mean, how prepared is...
But at the same time, you...
Yes, but what I'm saying, only you have 11 members of cabinet, but one person knowing the date of the election. So what are the reasons for the other members? What are they there for?
Well,
are they just waiting to hear the same thing what the opposition is waiting to hear?
Listen...
And that is democracy?
I am almost certain that the information would be shared, maybe not among all the members, but at the same time, if you know an election is coming up,
yes,
it's due at a certain point in time. I could remember my professor used to say, well, my primary school teacher used to say, sleep on your knees because a test is coming up. You know the test is coming up, be prepared. You know an election is coming up, be prepared. And
yes, but it don't have to be every 5 years. The Prime Minister could call election anytime.
Right, well, when he sees it fit, when he thinks he can win.
But that is what I'm saying, but that's not free and fair. It's one-sided. The Prime Minister see he could win. You hear what you're saying? That is what I'm saying.
No. It's not. It's a team effort. It's a team effort.
Yeah, but what about the opposition who represent other peoples in the community? Aren't they supposed to have a fair chance?
Do you think, in your opinion, simply because the date certain has not been publicized, published in whatever form, are you thinking now that the opposition is at a disadvantage?
Yes, they are, because it's what is being said, that the election is free and fair and free and from fear. But how could it be possible when the Prime Minister could say, okay, I could win now, so I'm calling the election now. So the opposition is not ready because they're expecting 5 years. So how could that be fair?
Any opposition that expects an election to run the full gamut, meaning the full length,
but
in terms of
that's
time.
What I'm saying. They expect, Mr. Stanley, your expectation and what is factual is two different things. That's what I'm saying. Take your expectation out of it. The Prime Minister could call election anytime. So why is it only he alone has this reason? That's all I'm asking.
Caller, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Are you saying that parliamentary democracy, coming from a Westminster point of view, is an unfair system?
It is. It is. Because look at the situation we have in now with Levis and Sinkit. You think if things were being fair, they would have to be arguing? You go into an election with an understanding that you would do certain things. And then now people telling you, put it in the Constitution. So where is people principles? Now,
so you're saying that...
If anyone question my principles on this radio station, it will be hard for me to call in. But we keep doing it.
Okay, so you're proposing a set date for election. That's what you're proposing, like in America.
That is much better, so that the citizens is aware, the opposition is aware, and everyone is aware. But when there's only one person who has the knowledge of where he's taking the country, that can't be free and fair and democracy.
I'm not sure if that statement is true. One person knows where he's taking the country because he has the right to set the date for election. I don't think you can make such an absolute statement, Carl. Really?
It remind me of state of emergency, the way how the election is held.
No, but Caller, you are going to an extreme in terms of...
No, Mr. Stanley.
In my proposal to the constitutional reform, all the 17 recommendations that I submitted to the committee, a set date was stated in one of my proposals for elections.
Yes.
Well, we never had constitutional reform. and as a consequence, it never happened. It was never, a document was never published to the point where it became the law of the land. The Constitution was never amended, and therefore it is still on the shelves in Bastille. Just recently, maybe a year ago, I had to ask for a copy of it. But I'm just saying to you, until the Constitution is reformed, that would never be in the Constitution, because...
Mr. Stanley, have you noticed in Nevis and in St. Kitts, there is no one having lectures on the Constitution to the citizens? No matter the situation, no matter how the citizens cry about Constitution, no one, no lawyer in this federation seems to have gone nowhere to study the Constitution. And so the citizens interpret it as they feel. You pay a lawyer. This is what we get in. No one, and I keep saying it, no one represents the Constitution to the people to say, let's have some educational programming. Nothing. After 30 years of independence, this is what we get. We keep saying, educate the people how to vote, how to make an X, and them kind of things. Till all I know? No, these are things we should be teaching in the schools. People shouldn't be waiting until they're 50 years old to learn how to make an X in a box.
Well, there are guidelines.
We need
there are guidelines
to have democracy. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So,
well, the caller made some strong point. I suppose he has his argument, as there is argument based on the advantage and disadvantage, pros and cons of a set date arrangement, when it comes to election.
Good evening. You're on Let's Talk.
Yeah, good evening. Again, now, maybe the last caller wasn't listening because I recall on Win FM, Dr. Warner. Do you remember him?
Yes.
He passed away.
Oh, yeah?
He used to give lectures on Win FM, and when he died, the present governor general continued. This was done on the radio where you were even able to call in.
Quite so.
But some people said they don't listen to the radio, and the other day it came to my mind, I said I was going to ask the station if they could replay. Because they began from section 1 all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
Where Dr. Warner stopped. Tapley Seaton continued. So it's not true. Only that even now as we discuss ideas, I don't listen to that radio station. You know what I mean? But when you put on the band them and they walk up on the carrier, they're there. The same radio station they don't listen to. And the Constitution is online. It used to be on the Prime Minister's website when Douglas was in. I think it is now on the one with the laws.
Yes.
You know what I mean, right?
Yes.
If you go to SKNIS, it is there free, so we could read it for ourselves. Take some time and read it, and maybe again, as I said, maybe we should ask Win FM to replay the constitutional discussions that were held on radio. I don't know if anybody there remember it. Do you?
Yes, I do remember.
Hello?
I do remember.
All right then. So just to correct that person.
Yes. So you see, the fellow who called, the last caller who called, he is of the opinion that nothing is in the public domain regarding the constitutional education, and he is dead wrong, as you would have brought to the fore the thing about Mr. Warner and the Honourable Tapley Seaton, Governor General. And the information is there. At the same time, the Constitution is on the website. But if he chooses not to go there, do we have a caller? Good evening, caller. You're on Let's Talk.
Good evening again. Good evening again, guys.
Good evening.
Let's not twist this thing. The caller probably didn't remember how the thing worked, but the voting. Let's be real. You see, when politicians talk, a lot of times following going on, because you missed the whole scene of my brother. I can remember the issue in St. Kitts and Nevis was that Douglas had the election in his pocket. Remember that?
Yeah.
Good. So why I'm trying to confuse people today? The issue was Douglas had the election in his pocket and it was wrong. So here the plan was, you guys told Douglas for Timothy to train that ruling. You remember how I was jumping up? Because that's the issue. I mean, around the bush. Maybe the farmers forget. The big issue here that Douglas should have never have the election in his pocket. The nation supposed to know when the election date. But look how God is good. It puts back round on the same set of people who went against Douglas with Timothy Harris. So we know that the election is definitely in his pocket against his own people. My brother God don't sleep. So I went all around the bush, all the crucified Douglas for having the election date. That was one of the things to get Douglas out of power. But I must have issues, But I remember that I mean, a sharp on the ball. Because here's the issue today now. Timothy Harrison didn't fall out. Now all the balling that Timothy got election in his pocket. When all you went in power, you support them getting the leader Douglas to say that he had the election in his pocket. No, Timothy didn't fall out. All you're crying blood. But you must stop this and dishonest. These young people is looking on. A lot of people playing with these people, or just playing with the country. Instead of here today telling us where the country going to be going forward, with a bunch of people waiting on people what going to happen Thursday. But all you see is Douglas that he got a blackberry. But we are today waiting to see what going to happen Thursday. So the country at a standstill at the moment, waiting on 3 clowns. How this could be right? Sean Richardson said to overseas reporter, my brother, that he has not been to cabinet for months. That's not acceptable. Hello?
We're listening.
I'm asking you, Sean Richards, we find out from an overseas reporter, Sean Richards has not been to cabinet in months. Sean Richards come and tell us again that the police got him in some report. And that's the reason why he don't go cabinet, because he called the police. My brother, what we running, a popular country? Mark Bradley is a part of all of that. Mark Bradley is a part of all of this foolishness. And I want to adjust the thing. People are stupid like before. My brother, stop playing with us. I need to come clean to the nation. Call out these guys who in government today. Let's stop worrying about Douglas. And Douglas, still been talking about Douglas. We don't hear about Douglas. Let us talk about the bunch of clown that we have leading us today. Look at Mark Bradley, a big man come down outside the government headquarters for meeting. He gone back, he's empty-handed. He come down for meeting outside the government headquarters, standing up, drinking coffee, and up to now the meeting cannot finish. He gone back, he's empty-handed. And I talking to people, talking to stupid people. Come on, guys, let us get it together. Deal with the problem now. We got a set of people need to be on the government. They dishonest, they distrusted everything. They call him on another kind of names. Something wrong, and I want to address it. My brother, you have a lovely night.
Well, this idea about having election in pocket, I mean, and the caller before.
We can't verify everything this fellow is saying, or the caller is saying. And it's good to trust, but you have to have the apparatus to verify. And if he is stating that Mark was in St. Kitts, outside of government headquarters, and he came back to me empty-handed, I can't say whether or not that is true. Good evening, caller.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, caller.
Yeah, good evening. I am wanting to join in the conversation because this Westminster system that we are run by, I think it needs something done to it. we have a Westminster system that, a party gets in. We have candidates who run and cannot get to sit in government. I think something should be done, because if you have a candidate who won, every candidate who wins should for some reason or the other be involved in Parliament. You can't just ignore the voters who vote for a particular candidate and he's out because he's not with a particular party.
Well,
that's one thing.
The Westminster system gives a majority.
We could change the system, because too many things are wrong with the system. Too many things. The date of election, that has been a problem, and we've been talking about that since we got independence about 48 or 49 years ago. And nothing is being done. Nothing has been done. The individuals who are, in position then to talk about it, they talked about a flawed constitution, talking about Sir Probin Innes and Fred Phillips. They talk about a recipe for disaster, the same constitution. Talk about an unfinished document, and you mean to say 48 years with all the brilliant people we have passing through our legislature, our parliament, nobody could change it. Nobody could attempt to change it. Dr. Tugumba Brown voiced his opinion on the nonsense that we have as well. And every year we go when we talk about all sorts of other things that are relatively unimportant, and we don't address these important issues. The system needs to change, and we should have enough individuals in there who will be strong enough, man enough to take that Westminster Constitution and change it. Do something about it, man. Election of candidates, election gripe. We have always a party gripe. Either this party or that party. Nobody else who is outside of the party could get in. And even Stanley who ran as an independent, even if Stanley won his seat, can't get in to sit and talk in government. All those things are wrong in this modern day. And these are things I think we need to address and change instead of a lot of the petty issues that we usually bring up and talk about on a regular basis. The men who are elected who go in Parliament and change some of these things. 48 years, nobody could change and make an amendment to this Constitution.
Well, Dr. Brown and I were supposed to have put something together as a reformed document for the Constitution. We were sometimes referred to the Stanley Constitution, but it was Dr. Brown and I who were supposed to have done something. Anyhow, that's for another edition of the Let's Talk. Remember, tomorrow is the Honourable Mark Brantley. He comes in at 8 o'clock, and this edition of the Let's Talk program for tonight is concluded, and we thank you for those who called and make their contribution. Have a good night.
And opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis